The spokesman for Pelosi is responding to that cancellation.
Drew Hamill says Egypt was never on the itinerary, despite Trump's claim to the contrary. He adds a Pelosi-led delegation looked to forward a meeting with U.S. troops and military leaders in Afghanistan. Hamill stresses that a stop in Brussels was required for pilot rest. During that stop, he said members of the congressional delegation plan to meet with NATO allies. Tom Roberts, NBC News Radio.
A U.S. delegation trip to the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland has been canceled. The White House made the cancellation after getting backlash from Democrats. They were criticizing that trip because of the cancellation of Nancy Pelosi's. Most House Republicans are going against the Trump administration when it comes to Russia sanctions. The House voted overwhelmingly to revoke a Treasury Department plan to reduce sanctions on companies owned by a major ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin. The vote, 362 to 53, with 136 Republicans joining the Democrats. A judge is finding 3 officers accused of lying about the deadly shooting of an African-American teenager in Chicago in 2014 not guilty.
The state has failed to meet its burden on all charges. Therefore, there is a finding of not guilty as to every count and each defendant of conspiracy, official misconduct, and obstruction of justice.
Thomas Gaffney, David March, and Joseph Walsh were charged there for allegedly lying about Officer Jason Van Dyke's killing of Laquan McDonald. Van Dyke was convicted of second-degree murder in the 17-year-old's death. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
Why are you listening to this radio station? Why? When you can host your own radio show. You're listening and you think you can do better? You have a message or a product you want everyone to know about. Host your own radio show. Team up with the area's best radio professionals and let them make you sound like you should be on NBC. KCAA NBC Radio, that is. KCAA produces more than 50 local programs each week on subjects ranging from business and sports to political talk, vegan diets, or even marijuana-related issues. We don't just broadcast on the radio, we broadcast to the world. Online, on TV, on social media, on Facebook. You'll be all over. Imagine what your friends will say. And KCAA reaches over 5 million people on 3 radio stations. Join the staff on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM. NBC Radio. Jump on the KCAA Express. Call 909-793-1065. That's 909-793-1065. And get ready to transmit.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reid. By the way, you can follow the show on Facebook at Viewpoint with Father John. And kids, as I've been letting you know, we are on Instagram at Viewpoint with Father John. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing a false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. Brothers and sisters, Viewpoint with Father John is a listener-supported program. You are the ones who keep us on air each week. So please go to viewpointwithfatherjohn.com, click on the support button, and give what you can. I truly thank you for your support. Also, I'd like to invite you to buy a copy of my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me. The premise of this book is that we are all God's children and that we do not need more self-improvement, but rather self-discovery. Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and most online bookstores. Get your copy today. And this evening, I'm very happy to share with you that I have a guest I'm excited to have this evening, Senator Josh Newman. Josh Newman is a former state senator from California's 29th District, which included 16 cities across Orange, Los Angeles, and San Bernardino counties. During his legislative service, Newman served as chairman of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, as a member of the Business and Professions, Health and Insurance and Banking Committees, as chair of the San Gabriel Valley Legislative Caucus, and as the state's representative on the California Workforce Development Agency. During his tenure, he successfully advanced more than 20 individual legislative proposals, enabling policies and program improvements in areas such as public safety, veterans, mental health, education, jobs, transportation, and critically needed improvements in California's infrastructure. Sorry, got some bad deals on some lips today. Prior to being elected to California State Senate, Newman served as founder and executive director of Armed Force to Workforce, an initiative created in 2012 to assist young veterans in Orange County, Greater Los Angeles area in pursuit of rewarding, career-oriented employment. At the core of this organization, the approach was the fundamental belief that no single group has as much to offer to employers as young veterans. Now, I'll tell you, he's also a veteran himself. While he graduated from Yale University, he also served as an officer of the United States Army. He was active duty assignments with nuclear weapons detached to South Korea and conventional artillery. I'm sorry, I don't have my reading glasses on, kids. In the 25th Infantry Division in Hawaii. And he has a whole lot of other things he does. I'm cutting it a little bit short because we have a short program tonight. But he also, I believe, is going to run again in 2020. We're not here to talk about politics tonight, but his life story. I've done some veteran programs with him, mainly the memorial programs at Memory Gardens in Brea. And he knows I'm very fond of him as an individual. And most of all, in his effort to serve his community, one of the things I try to say on this program is this isn't left or right, it's America, and this we have to come together. So, Senator, welcome to the program.
Father John, thank you, and thank you for that very nice introduction.
I'm
Almost
sorry.
Too nice.
I'm sorry I butchered it so bad.
No, I'm flattered.
Never trust a reading to a dyslexic. You know, I should have started at the back and went forward.
Yeah.
How are you this evening?
I'm good. It's a pleasure to be on your show. It's nice to connect with you.
Well, it's a privilege having you. You know, one of the things I appreciate about you, and I don't know if I ever told you this when we've met down in Brea, is your dedication to doing what you feel is right, whether it's popular or not. And integrity, in my book, is something you do when you don't have the popular crowd behind you, but when it's the right thing to do. And so I just wanted to throw that out there and let you know how much I appreciate you.
I truly appreciate that, Father John.
And let's talk a little bit about your life. What drew you to your life of service?
That's a good question. So my dad was kind of a small-town doctor. I grew up in a little town in upstate New York. And my father was a general surgeon, but in a small town, you wind up doing lots of things. And I think everybody's sort of view of the world is inherited to some degree from their parents. My dad was one of the most altruistic, egalitarian people I've ever met. And I think he inculcated in my sister and I a real appreciation for community and for people.
Good. Well, that's really what service is about, too. It's looking to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself. I truly believe that. That's what drew me to the priesthood. Now, you went to Yale University. What was your major?
So I was a history major at Yale.
You didn't find that kind of old school stuff? I'm sorry. Bad joke.
All that old news.
Yeah, I had to do that. See, my engineer, Nick, he forces me to use bad lines like that. He threatens me. So,
Yeah, that's funny.
So, what was your experience like at Yale?
You know, I had a wonderful experience in college. So I'm very fortunate to have had the opportunity to study with a bunch of smart people, with a bunch of very good teachers. My focus in history was 20th century American politics and government, and that's what led me to kind of the next chapter of my life, got me to thinking about serving in the United States military, just mostly, honestly, because learning about America's 20th century was informed to a very large degree by its experience in a couple of world wars, and it had kind of ironically some positive effects. And so I was impressed as I was getting ready to graduate from Yale that there was a generation of leaders in both business and public service who had been in the military in one way or another. And so I wanted to go and have that same experience myself.
Well, I thank you for your service. That's a noble calling, and I have a great appreciation for everyone who's served our country. And tell us about your time in the Army.
So I was sort of a rarity, as you might expect, a kid coming from an Ivy League school into the Army. I went to, when I joined the military, I joined in New Haven. That's where Yale's located. I was apparently the first student from Yale who'd come the 2 blocks to the recruiting office in however many years. And so it was an interesting and, truly sort of life-expanding experience. So I had the privilege of serving with an interesting cross-section of my, American fellow soldier. And I got to travel a little bit. I was in Georgia for basic training, and then Oklahoma for some more training, and then Korea for a year, and then Hawaii and a couple other places. And the sort of sum total of my experience was truly rewarding. And what I think I learned out of the whole experience was just how our lives take us to different places. And, lots of people do things for different reasons. And so I had gone to a fancy Ivy League school, but I was always impressed that the kids in my unit were, just as smart, just as talented, and in a lot of cases more competent, resourceful than I or my peers. And it led me to the observation that most of life is determined not by ability but by opportunity. And I think I've taken that with me, particularly in public service and prior to running, and the work I tried to do with veterans in Orange County and Southern California before that.
Sure, and that's important stuff. One of the things that bothers me with politics, and I know I said I wasn't going to talk much about politics, but we priests are known to change our mind from time to time, is I see on a political event, I'm not accusing you of this, I'm just giving an observation, this is more on a federal level than state, where a lot of talk about caring about veterans and then not following through with benefits. And we have a lot of kids coming back with traumatic brain disorder, PTSD, and I was the chaplain endorser for the diocese for a number of years, and so I was over all the chaplains for the Army for my denomination. And so I got to see this firsthand and up close, how tough this is. What do you think we can do to do a better job on that? And I'm sorry to put you on the spot with that. What you've been in.
No, and that's fine. And so I think the point is well taken. And the truth is, incidentally, one of the reasons that I decided or considered and eventually decided to run for public office in the first place was precisely because of my experience in working with veterans. And I in about 2012, got interested in the question about veteran employment, veteran unemployment, and why young vets who had recently come home from their service, even as the economy was getting better, were having so much trouble finding gainful employment. Some vets suffer from service-related issues that interfere with employment, that they need treatment, but about 70%, are ready and willing and eager to go to work. And yet, despite the rhetoric, as you noted, around service and our sort of general appreciation for veterans, our admiration and honoring of veterans in our country, we really haven't done a particularly good job in honoring their service in the most important way, which to my mind is helping them to make the next step into the next chapter in their lives. And I frankly got very frustrated, having gotten very involved in veteran employment circles in the greater LA area. I got very frustrated with the public officials I met, who, as you mentioned, typically said wonderful things at the events that they attended, where they had their picture taken with the flag in the background and young men and women in uniform. But then were awfully hard to find afterwards, to follow up and talk about serious solutions to serious problems. And so I think you're absolutely right. We as a nation are very lucky. Very small percentage of the population now serves in the military. but we are blessed to be defended by some of the best, most courageous, most competent young people you'll ever meet. And we're not doing enough. In many cases, we're saying nice things, but not doing the necessary things.
I think I learned some of that. I was doing some work with somebody that you may or may not know, General Joseph Smith. I know that sounds like a show name, but it's not. He was doing work helping Mike Antonovich. I have friends on both sides of the aisle, so I'm an independent who finds good people on both sides and find people who are more talk than action on both sides as well. But he was trying to do a lot for homeless veterans, and he was a tremendous resource for me. And I used to have a whole stack of his cards, and when he told me he was doing stuff, I said, okay, I'm going to start sending you people. And he says, go ahead. So I took him up on it, and I gave out more of his cards and sent more people to him to get housing. I think I about drove the guy crazy. But, don't offer if you don't mean it, right?
Right. Well, that's wonderful. So we need more public servants like General Smith, yeah.
Yeah, and he worked hard. And what are you doing now?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So your listeners know, and you referenced the fact that I'm a former senator, just by way of edification. I was the state legislator, the senator who was recalled in response to the implementation of the gas tax back in 2017. That led to a very intense effort, which was, for the most part, partisan in nature, kind of sad to me, that targeted me as the 27th Democratic senator elected to the state senate as kind of the vulnerable guy. And so in June of last year, I was the subject of a recall vote and wound up losing, and as a result, lost my job, lost my office. So I'm working on a number of veteran initiatives right now. And as you mentioned, I know we don't want to talk politics, but I'm working toward getting my old job back. It was a real privilege and an honor to be able to serve in that capacity. As you mentioned, I, like you, am not a particularly partisan guy, but I got stuck in the partisan crosshairs, if you will. And public service is both worthy, but also, I think, a noble thing to do. And despite my sort of recent political experience, I'm eager to try and get my old job back and do it again.
Sounds good. Well, speaking of partisan issues, we have to go to our first commercial break. My guest this evening is Senator Josh Newman, and we'll be back in 2 and 2 and continue our conversation.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
I'm Andrew Caravella. Welcome to another The More You Know. Okay, January 17th. Happy Thursday. Guess what? It's Ditch Your New Year's Resolution Day. Get excited, everybody, because you don't have to do that crazy stuff that you said you were going to do at the first of the year. Now, only 9% stick to their resolution, so you might as well just be part of the other 91% and quit right now, saving yourself all the hard work, because, come on, you're likely to fail in the end anyways. Not to be a downer, but you may have accomplished some resolutions already, but many of them may be long-term goals that will take all year, and they already may be becoming a burden. I mean, mine are. We're not even going to get into that. Anyways, you may have broken some already as well. Today, everyone has an excuse to ditch all their New Year's resolutions without any guilt. So, Ditch New Year's Resolutions Day is just for you, also known as Broken Resolution Day. I'm Andrew Caravella. This has been The More You Know. Happy Thursday.
And welcome back, our friends. We are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I'm your host, Father John Reid. And brothers and sisters, I do want to remind you that this is a listener-supported program. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, please go to viewpointwithfatherjohn.com and click the support button. Whatever you can give will truly be appreciated. Those of you who've been contributing, I thank you very much. And once again, we're joined by Senator Josh Newman. And while I said I wasn't going to get into politics, I'm sorry, sometimes a little bit does that come in when you're talking to a senator, particularly one that you really like. And again, I don't come from either side. I don't come from Democratic or Republican side. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a true independent, not just by label, but I try to see where we can come together because in my mind, we're really American. And my experience has been with people on both sides of the aisle is we may have different ways that we want to care for this country, but we all love this country, and we're just trying to find a way to find the middle where we can take the best care of it. So having said that, Senator, I guess that's kind of sets you up a little bit. Sorry about that. Now, you're running again in 2020, is that correct?
That is correct, John.
And tell me why? What is it you want to do? And I know that's it's not meant as a hook question, but so people understand.
I think that's a good question. So I ran in the first place, as I mentioned, sort of the natural extension of my work on veterans issues. And, you know, the thing we talked about before the break, this question about if we as a country, as a state, won't do the thing that everybody seems to agree, you know, that we should do better by our veterans, you know, what are the odds that we'll make progress on the harder issues where there are competing interests or counterbalancing constituencies? And I'd come to believe, and I still do, that we deserve better. The average person believes very strongly that they're not getting integrity and service in the way that they I think should be able to expect from their elected officials. So that's why I ran, and that's the kind of elected public servant I tried to be. I'm proud of the work I did in the state senate. It was sort of a strange, almost out-of-body experience to find myself the target of a recall that was really about partisan politics in its rawest form, even as I'm not a particularly partisan guy myself. You know, I'm a member of a party, but to your point, there's lots of different ways to serve. There's lots of different ways to make our state, our communities better, and I've always taken that approach in my work. And so, you know, having had that experience with the current state of politics, I still think it's worth it. I still think it's worth making the case that people do deserve better, more responsive, more accountable representation, irrespective of, you know, the R or the D after their name. And that's what I'm aspiring to do. That's what I tried to do while I was in the state senate.
Sure. Well, you know, people will tell you I do way too much reading than I should. That's probably why I keep having to get more and more glasses. But I was reading Ted Kennedy's autobiography a while back, and one of the things he said really struck me in his book, where he said he would pull up in front of the Senate, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, and he'd get really warm and fuzzy inside, sort of, excuse the expression, and he'd say, I would look at the building and I think, I get to work there. And it was such an honor. And he and so on in the Republican Party would argue till the cows would come home, and then they'd go have a beer together, and they'd find a compromise in the middle. It wasn't all the tribalism. He says, now it's 72 assistants to each senator, and we just send nasty emails and nothing gets done. He says it's become a very lonely place. And I think the tribalism that's taking over in politics is really hurting us greatly. I read a great book recently by Stephen Kornacki called "The Red and the Blue: The Beginning of Tribal Politics," which started with Newt Gingrich, and he started coming in with the stuff. How do we, in the state of California, which I was born and raised here, how do we get out of who's right and into what's right? What is your view on that, if I may ask?
So yeah, that's the I think the riddle of the day. And so to sort of match your story, and this may sound a little corny, but in the California State Senate, which is in the Capitol, which is this to me a very inspiring building, and has a lot of the same qualities as the U.S. Capitol. In the Senate chamber, there's a picture above the dais in front of George Washington, kind of standing, looking out in the distance. And every single time I voted as a member of the Senate, I would be looking at President Washington, and I was always very aware of what a privilege it was to be able to do this, and what a profound obligation to serve. And so that question about how do we get to a less combative, less tribal politics, I don't think you can count on politicians to get there by themselves. I think it's going to take the people. It's going to take voters. Essentially sort of redrawing the lines and insisting that instead of, a super red guy or a super blue woman, man, that we elect people who are actually committed to doing the greater good and are willing to work together to do that. And that may sound trite, but I'm always reminded, in my efforts, politics has become a kind of reality entertainment, tribal warfare, as you said. Some people look at it as kind of, their own, the equivalent of their sport. But what voting is, or what it's always intended to be, is how we as citizens elect the people, how we hire the people through election to work for us in the public sphere. And we as citizens should insist that the people we hire be willing to step back and do the right thing, as opposed to the partisan thing all the time.
Ooh, you said a powerful thing right there. And, maybe it's semantics, but I think we made a mistake when we started referring to them as our leaders instead of our representatives. Because I think it took away our responsibility as citizens. Again, this is just my opinion, but I'm right. That it's supposed to be a team idea that, how can our representatives represent us if we don't make our desires known by writing the letters, by going and seeing them, not in a hostile way, but in the way that, hey, you're representing me. Here's what my thoughts are. Is this reasonable? Is it doable? What can we do as a community? And I do believe that every citizen has a responsibility to be involved. Maybe that's just because I'm a stubborn Irishman. But, I agree with you on that. Of course, on my own selfish end, I have a buddy who at some point is going to run for state senate, and I told him that with all the help I've given him through the years, I do expect to get nominated for the job of the Capitol chaplain. So, so I can give everyone a bad time. So
you'd be a terrific Capitol chaplain. You've got my vote.
Well, you're very kind. Thank you. See, I've already gone into politics, and I'm not even a politician.
Right.
Tell me about your community. What drives you? I know the veteran stuff drives you, and I take my hat off to you for that. It's a very important thing and very noble. But you sound like there's more things that really pull you in your community, if that's the right term. Are you comfortable sharing that with us?
Oh, certainly. So I live in Fullerton, which is your typical southern, greater LA, Southern California town. Which is medium-sized city with a lot to say for it, and probably some things that could be better. I've been very lucky and kind of very grateful to have the opportunity to work on a bunch of different causes. So my wife and I both served as court-appointed special advocates to youth in the foster system for a couple of years, and where you get matched to a young person who's in foster care, and you act as both a mentor and as their advocate in the court system as they work their way, hopefully, toward reunification with their parents or moving on in some way. And through service, I think you can do something really profound, which is to see something bigger than your own immediate circumstances and through that work, I got an insight into another side of Orange County that most people aren't aware of. This is a very rich, very prosperous area, but there's a whole slice of this county and our communities that are really challenged, and young people, for no fault of their own, have wound up in foster care. And you realize just how important not only individual services, but how important the quality of government programs are when you do that. I've worked. My wife and I have been active with Special Olympics. I've been very active locally. I'm the chair right now of a little organization called Neighbors United for Fullerton, and our goal is people won't believe it because I got kicked out of the state senate, but to be a nonpartisan advocacy group for improving the quality of life in our city. And we live in a time, Father John, where all the world is in front of you through the internet. People are very knowledgeable about certain things. It seems to me on any given day that I know people who know so much about the Kardashians or tons about sports and fantasy sports, and yet so many people I know, and in fact, friends of mine know so little about government, about local government, about civic processes, and aren't doing enough themselves to be a part of sort of the civic fabric and activities in their city. And you can see that in our politics these days because it has coarsened and become more polarized. And if everybody got more involved, not only would they be more knowledgeable, but they'd be more aware that there is more to do together that we can do beneficially than we can get done simply by fighting red team versus blue team.
Wow. That's powerful stuff there. I'm a big believer in that. I wasn't a foster child, but I grew up in a really violent home. And one of the saving grace, my dad he left before I was 1 year of age, and I met him 28 years ago. But the YMCA had a Big Brother program. And the guy who was my big brother through that program was in the Air Force. And he just taught me about doing the right thing and about caring about other people. And I think he made a huge impact on my life, that it was important to do everything with integrity. But more than anything, he taught me that somebody cared. And it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, that's what you and your wife are trying to do in this program with the foster children. Would that be a proper analysis of that?
Absolutely. And again, life is funny. Many of us are very fortunate, but you don't realize, the gifts you're given when you're born aren't necessarily the same for everybody. And you meet the brightest, most sort of talented, wonderful people who, by no fault of their own, have found themselves in tough circumstances. And if you can give them some hope and some guidance and some mentorship, that goes a long way.
I'm reminded of something that Dr. P.P. Jackson said in the 1800s at Cambridge, of all places. And he's talking to all of his colleagues, and he says, it's no use trying to be clever. We're all clever here. Just try to be kind, a little kind. And I find that when we work with these young people, they really don't care about how smart we are. What they care about is that we truly care, and they love to hear about where we fell down and got back up and how they can too. Does that fit in what you're trying to do with foster children?
Absolutely, and it's also true. You have these experiences, you realize just how segmented, how segregated our communities have become. And so, if you're reasonably well off, you can live in a bubble. You can go many, many days, without having any really sort of deep interactions with people that are unlike yourself. And I think it's true on the other side. And that runs counter to, I think, the true American ethos of egalitarianism and opportunity. And anything that we can do to cause people to talk to each other, to mix, and to participate more fully, it helps to sort of soften those very rough edges that we see these days.
Was it Abraham Lincoln who said that a man stands his tallest when he stoops to help a child? I think so. I think he said it on Facebook one time.
Right. I think I saw that on his YouTube channel.
Yeah, forgive me. I know I'm going to get some letters on that. But it's one of my favorite expressions, because I really do think we are investing in our future. And the greatest thing we can show is that we care, because if we're being phony, they know it. You know, Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "What you are speaks so loud I can't hear what you're saying." And these kids know. They're really smart. And a lot of them are on guard because they've had bad experiences. And
Right.
so when you're there and you're genuine with them, and I don't mean to sound preachy to you, Senator, but what you're doing just touches me very deeply, because you have the power right there in your hands and your experience to change a life for the better. That's an awesome responsibility. And they don't care what side of the aisle you're on. They don't care really what you do for a living. They care about the fact that when they're in front of you, they're the one thing that you are paying attention to. And I think that's just an awesome thing. And I thank you for doing that. Speaking of paying attention to things, my engineer is waving his hand saying, I better pay attention. That's commercial time. And so my guest this evening is the esteemed Senator Josh Newman, and we'll continue our conversation in 2 and 2.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, K292FQ Riverside, and K293CF Moreno Valley.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personal funeral planning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
From the KCAA Weather Center, I'm Glenn Anderson. Your forecast for the rest of this evening calls for showers likely, mainly before 10 p.m. with cloudy skies and an overnight low around 47. Should see sunshine on the way for your Friday and a high near 66, with more sunny skies and highs in the mid-70s as we move into your weekend. Have a great rest of your evening. I'm Glenn Anderson, broadcasting live from the Tri-City Center at the 10 and 210 freeways. We're the trifecta of talk in Southern California. KCAA 102.3 FM Riverside, 106.5 FM Redlands, and the Legacy 1050 AM Loma Linda, San Bernardino.
And welcome back, brothers and sisters. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reid. And again, I want to remind you that this is a listener-supported program. You are the ones who keep us on the air each week. So please go to viewpointwithfatherjohn.com, click on the support button, give what you can, and I truly thank you for your support. Also, one more time, I'd like to invite you to buy a copy of my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me. The premise of this book is that we are all God's children, and that we do not need more self-improvement. Rather, we need self-discovery. Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and most online bookstores. The good ones, anyhow. They don't carry my book. They're not that good. And, you know, I have the best engineer in the business. How you doing tonight, Nick?
I don't know where the best engineer is, but I'm here. I'm doing good.
Well, that makes you the best in the room, doesn't it?
Oh, I suppose.
Yeah, and of course, Gabby's across the room. All you know Gabby. She's the one who keeps me to not get all the FCC letters. And but Nick, we can do it tonight because the FCC is closed.
That is the rumor on the street. Now, anyone who else has a show here on KCAA, that does not mean you can start saying what you want. That is not what that means.
I can't say booger?
Well, you just did.
Okay, I won't say it again.
Okay, good.
Okay. All right, well, thanks, Nick. So everyone, that's Nick, and he does a great job for us. And again, back to our conversation with the great Senator Josh Newman and the wonderful work he's doing. Now, you're down in Fullerton. That's a great area. I get there quite a bit. I go to Loma Vista to do funerals, and we see each other at least once a year at Memory Garden for the memorial program that we do together, which you always do a great job, by the way. And
thank you.
Which is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, because I wasn't bringing you on for politics. I'd bring you on because I have great respect for you, because I've had a couple conversations at that program and got to, I think, know the person away from the politician, which is sometimes not easy to do in some circles. And I was impressed with who you are in your service and how much you give of yourself. Now, do you have any other special projects you're working on in Orange County that are close to you in your heart and with your wife?
At the moment, no. I mean, so unfortunately, you've run out of time in your day, and politics being what it is, it winds up being it's a full-time job even when you don't have the job. But I do appreciate. You and I do see each other that is a wonderful service every year on Veterans Day. And it's always nice to take that moment and pay homage to those who served.
It really is, because heavens, what we there's not enough words to say thank you, and sometimes we're burdened with that. And now your wife is Darcy, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And you have my goodness, you have two weird but lovable rescue chihuahuas, and you also have a daughter. And I was worried about saying that all in one sentence, because I don't want people thinking I'm making a crack when I'm not making a crack, because I'm known to have a really bad sense of humor. So the rescue, where'd you get them?
The daughter or the dog?
The dogs. The daughter. I took that class.
So we get our dogs, where they're most easily found. So we had three till recently. One passed away. But when we say rescue chihuahuas, they found us on the streets. I had two that found me on the streets of downtown Los Angeles, and then one that found a friend of ours in Anaheim and called us and said, "Hey, I found a Chihuahua. You've already got two. Take this one."
Oh.
So they're to rescue a dog is to be reminded of what unconditional love is really about.
Well, you may not know this, but Gabby, I'm Eastern Orthodox. I'm allowed to be married and have a family. And we have a rescue sparrow. And 19 months ago, my son, who's a truck mechanic out at a truck stop in Ontario, sends me a text, "Dad, we have this baby sparrow that was flying through the shop. A door closed on it. We think it broke its wing. If I can catch it, will you take care of it?" Because he knows I'm a sap for this kind of thing. I said, "Yeah, if you can catch it, bring it over." And it was only like 2 weeks old. I mean, it was a baby. And so he caught it, and being a typical mechanic, he put it in a hubcap box and brought it to Dad. And it turned out it broke its leg. And so we bound its leg with a Q-tip and gauze and hand-fed it. Well, we still have it 19 months later. It won't leave. It won't go out the door or out any windows. And everywhere I go, Boo follows and likes to sit on my shoulder, on my leg, take naps on me. So I'm into rescue as well.
That is awesome. It's easy to rescue a dog. That takes some talent. Is befriending a sparrow. That's really impressive.
Well, I think she really rescued us. I'll tell you kind of a personal story. I have arthritis throughout my body and fibromyalgia, and some days I'm in a lot of pain, and I had that a couple days this week, and she would not leave me for anything. She could feel that I was in pain, and even when I'm doing my prayers, she's on my robe and rubbing her head under my chin as if to say, "It's okay, Papa, I'm here with you." So, yeah, animals are really a great gift.
That's nice. There's kind of a saying in politics that if you want to have a friend in politics, get yourself a dog.
Yeah.
And I've been reminded of that many times since last June.
Well, no dogs would have me, so I dated some ugly women a couple of times. I'm just kidding. Here comes some more letters, I know. FCC, you're closed, remember. If it's okay, I'm going to ask something I didn't tell you I was going to ask, and it's not a trick question. But I do know, because I was doing some reading, that you are running in 2020. How's it look?
That's a good question. So, you have to be an optimist if you're going to stay in this business, I guess. And I'm also an idealist. And I think I couldn't tell you. Right? I think, if you look at the trends in my area, if you're a Democrat, the trend is favorable. But again, that's not really, as you and I agree, that's not what politics should be exclusively about. It shouldn't just be about party. I think that my kind of argument on behalf of my service is still compelling, right? I think people deserve better, and I'm endeavoring to do that. So I think it looks good. I've been encouraged in the last 6 months, sort of given my experience in the partisan cauldron. There's a lot of good people who recognize the work I did, what I was trying to do, and I've been very encouraged by their support so far.
Good. Now, you said we can do better, and I'm not, again, you've known me long enough to know I don't throw trick questions out there, so that's not where I'm coming from. Mm-hmm. In your view, what does that mean for us to do better? What would that encompass if you can put that out to people that you serve with?
And if we're talking about politics?
Sure, as servants of the people.
So, I guess the way I would frame it, Father John, is like I personally would make a distinction between politics and public service, right? They overlap. They're not necessarily the same thing.
Good to know.
In today's environment, it seems on any given day, politics seems to eclipse public service too often. And we see that in D.C., unfortunately, especially right now, and we certainly see it at the state and the local level. And I think it's really important at the state level. Most of what we want, what we expect, what we need out of state government is not inherently partisan. But if you approach your job as an elected official and see everything through that partisan lens, everything becomes adversarial. Most things become zero-sum, at least that's the perception. And we squander both the opportunity to do things, but I think the obligation we have to the people who send us to work.
Yes.
And so that's kind of how I would approach it.
Oh, that's good. And again, I'm not trying to throw you curveballs. It's just, I have, with my listeners, I have some of the smartest listeners, and I don't just say that. I really do. They stay in contact, and this program actually goes all the way around the world. And I get letters from people from Brazil and Panama and Philippines and such. And I really do try to educate the people on what do these things mean. And, and one of the things that's been a fight back and forth, and again, I always try to be honest about what my position is the universal health care, and I truly believe that it's important. I'm a person who has health problems, and before some of the changes, I wasn't able to get health insurance. And I hear people talking about wanting to do single payer in California. And I'm going to ask you something, not just because you're a politician, but friend to friend.
Sure.
Is it possible, or is it just a talking point at this point for people? I know that kind of puts you on the clip there.
So is it possible? So in a nation as wealthy, as successful as the United States, anything is possible, right? Remember when 30 years ago, it always used to be, if we could send a man to the moon, why can't we do X, right?
Sure.
And so if we had the collective will, it should certainly be possible to make sure that every single person has access to decent, quality, affordable health care. But we've made it really hard because of the politics, because of the economics. And so legislating fundamental change like this is a real challenge. And in order to do that, everybody has to have a shared investment in getting from here to a situation where a very large number of people do not have access to good health care, especially when they need it most, where it can bankrupt your family if you happen to get sick, to a point down the road where everybody would have access, but that clearly takes a bunch of trade-offs.
Yes.
Trade-offs individually, but also among constituencies that have vested interest in kind of the status quo. And so the only way to do that is to have an honest, really forthright conversation collectively and say, is this something that we as a nation or as a state believe in? And if so, let's figure out how to do it. And we've not been willing to do that or able to do that in the last 10 years for sure. I agree with you, but there's no simple prescription, no pun intended, we have to, you have to have first a consensus that it's worth doing, and then be willing to explore every avenue and find out, what are the trade-offs, what are the sort of collective compromises that we'll make in order to achieve that goal. And frankly, a lot of people don't see it the way you do, and that gets in the way.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of misinformation out there. People talk, a lot of trash about the mess in Canada. Well, I everyone says this, but I truly do know people from Canada who say they love their medical up there. And I thought it was really ironic that yesterday in the news, Rand Paul is going to Canada to have a medical procedure done.
Right. Right.
The other thing that's very important to me, and I'm sorry if I'm picking on you a little bit, is mental health. And I'll tell you why it's on my mind right now. This month, as you know, I do a lot of funerals, up to 200 a year. And this month alone, and we're just starting January, I have two suicide funerals. And forgive me if you can hear the tears in my voice, it's because it hurts me deeply. We got to do something with mental health in California. And do you have any ideas?
Well, again, I agree with you, and one of the regrets I have in sort of losing, my opportunity to serve is I think I was making progress in being part of solutions to mental health, improving mental health care and access to services in California. So one of the bills I got passed in 2017 rendered parity across health insurance plans. So health insurance couldn't hide behind the language in their plan and not provide mental health services at the same level as all other plans in California. I'm very proud of that. There was an act passed a number of years ago, the Mental Health Services Act, or MHSA, under Proposition 63, and that it's known as the so-called millionaire's tax, and so it rendered a tax of 1% on high-income earners in California to aggregate funds to make progress on mental health. And we have done a really poor job as a state in spending those monies to deliver better services, also to find better approaches to serving people with mental health needs. And so what you get out of that is the crisis, and what you get out of that crisis is the pain that you've observed through suicides and so much else. And it's truly, to my mind, one of the great moral imperatives of our age, right? Any single problem you talk about in our society can be traced back to the dearth of services around mental health care. And that includes, the hot-button issues around guns.
Yes.
Clearly, there are a bunch of things we need to do around firearms, but, there's, in parallel, a lot of the problems that arise that get sort of affected badly through gun violence are rooted in mental health needs. And so we need to do much better across all of those spheres, whether it's for veterans, whether it's for, average Californians, especially in today's very intense, sort of internet-connected world. It is clear that young people especially are having a different experience than, say, you and I did when we were young.
Sure.
And they need access to support and to therapy to make sure that little problems don't become intense ones.
Yeah. Well, so you're not the only one I pick on. I used to do a lot of stuff for Mike Antonovich from L.A. County, and we were very good friends, and I used to do invocations for him all the time and do veterans programs for him, and then I would fight with him on labor issues. We'd sit across the table, and it'd get heated, but we always had respect for each other. We'd always have lunch afterwards, and we appreciated each other. And we both came to the table with facts and good research, and then we would educate each other. And I sure hope that someday we can get back to that throughout the state, because we really are in this together. And it's a mistake to look for an RRD behind somebody's name. I think we need to put a big A for American, because we really are in this. And if one of us is losing, we're all losing. Well, you've been a terrific guest tonight, and I want to thank you for taking the time. I know I threw you a few curveballs.
I don't, Father John. I don't think that's true at all. I appreciate the way you conduct this program is I think, an example, especially as it relates to the political conversation. Those discussions we need to have, as you mentioned. So it's been a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, I look forward to seeing you in a few months over at Memory Garden, not at a funeral, but doing the Veterans Program again. I thought I'd better clarify that. And thank you for both your service in the Senate and especially for your service in the United States Army. Some people talk about giving. You offer to give your all, and I am deeply grateful for your service. And,
you are very kind, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Well, brothers and sisters, my guest has been Senator Josh Newman. I hope that this was educational for you. Again, this isn't a political program, but I try to get backgrounds from different people's lives and what draws them into what they're doing. And so I appreciate the senator who took his time to be with us tonight. He's a good man, and I can tell you that from knowing him on a more personal basis. And I'm not trying to say vote for him or not vote for him. I'm just telling you my experience with him is what you heard tonight is really my experience with him, that it's a man of integrity, and I don't have a dog in the fight because I'm an independent. I'm not on either side of the table on this. Couple of things. Again, this is listener supported, but also with the stuff going on, our brothers and sisters who are fellow Americans who are out of work right now that are employees of the federal government, if you can practice an act of charity, please do. If you're a landlord and they're a little behind on the rent, if you can be forgiving and help them, that would sure mean a lot. It may not mean much to you, that's coming from me, but you know, we talk about being Christian, and Christian is about charity and love and doing for others what they can't do for themselves, because we are in it together. And keep them in prayer. I don't care if they have a D or an R or an I at their name. We're all in this together. So let's come together and let's do what our representatives aren't doing right now by showing that we love one another. And if no one told you that they loved you this week, let me be the first. And next week, my guest will be Carl Morris, Puente House Foundation, and we're going to talk about addiction and the recovery from it. We'll be with you next week. God bless.
KCAA Loma Linda. Listen on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM.
4237, that's 855-585-4237, or visit Liberty Health Share online at libertyhealthshare.org. That's libertyhealthshare.org.
You're listening to GCN. Visit GCNlive.com today.
USA Radio News with Robin Walensky.
I think if they cannot change their course, the Democrats should actually change their leadership. Who's coming to these meetings?
That's House Minority Leader Republican Kevin McCarthy talking about Nancy Pelosi as President Trump cancels the House Speaker's trip, denying her use of a military plane to get to the Middle East because of the partial government shutdown. Now, this comes as Pelosi tries to tinker with the president's upcoming State of the Union address. Kevin McCarthy says
I think we can solve this in 15 minutes, and we could.
Now, as for the president, he writes a letter to Nancy Pelosi saying, due to the shutdown, I am sorry to inform you that your trip to Brussels, Egypt, and Afghanistan has been postponed.